Hey guys, in today's video I'm doing a video about my 5 best and 5 worst eyeshadow palettes. And I'm going to start with the 5 best and then go into the 5 worst at the end because I find that it'll be like less confusing that way. And I'm not going to go in any particular order either. Like I like these all a lot the same. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the Colourpop x Kathleen Lights Dream Street palette. This one is really nice. It's very affordable, so that's really good. And I love Kathleen, and I think she did a really nice job with this palette. It comes with like a lot of unique colors, but also really everyday colors, so you can use this both ways. I love this like navy blue right here. It's like my favorite color in the palette. I like using it on the lower lash line a lot for like everyday looks because I feel like it helps my eyes stand out a lot. So yes, it has like a really nice variety of shades, and the quality of these eyeshadows are really nice for being so affordable. Like if you switched out the pans and put them into like a more expensive palette, you wouldn't be able to tell which is which. Like the quality of these are really nice for like $16, which is really good, and they blend really nicely and you get a nice range of mattes and shimmers. And yes, I think that these are really amazing. They blend out really nicely. The shimmers are super pigmented, and yes, I use this a bit too much. I've already hit pan on the shade right here, so I might need another one of these sometime soon. I do like most Colourpop eyeshadow palettes, but this one is my favorite by far. I love everything about it. The packaging is super cute, and I love the shade range, and ouch, and yes, freaking hurt. So the next one I'll talk about is the Masquerade palette by Juvia's Place. Mine is like the mini version, so the pan sizes aren't, they're in regular like full-size pans, but I love the colors in this palette. You get a nice range of pops of color, which is really true to Juvia's Place, but you also get some neutral browns, which I can use on an everyday basis. So I feel like this palette, you can do both. You can do really colorful, really dramatic. You also do pretty natural looks with like these shades right here, and you also do like a light layer of these darker browns to make them look really natural. But I think that Juvia's Place is the best for when you want really colorful makeup looks because they just perform really nicely. Like, do you see that purple? That's bomb purple. Yes, Juvia's Place is also very affordable. I believe this palette is like less than $20 if you get the mini size. You also get a nice variety of shimmers and mattes in this palette. I will say this palette is mostly shimmers, but there is a lot of like essential mattes that you need. Like the dark browns are all matte, so that's really nice because those are like your building colors, which most of the time you want them to be matte to really deepen up your look. And these, for being colorful eyeshadows, these are really pigmented, and they blend out really nicely on your lids. They perform really nicely, and also really amazing for the price. I love Juvia's Place. And I do like every single palette from Juvia's Place, but I find that this one is one I reach for the most. And if you're wanting like a Juvia's Place palette but you don't want anything too colorful, I feel like this one is a really nice one for that. They also have like another one that's like more neutral, but I like this one the best, so yes. The formula of these eyeshadows are more like a hard formula, so they don't give you like any fallout ever. Whenever I use this palette in my makeup looks, you can tell like there's no fallout under my eyes, which I really appreciate, especially when I do more deep and dramatic looks, which is what I usually do when I reach for this palette. And yes, I think that this formula is amazing. Okay, so the next one I want to talk about is by Morphe. It's the Jaclyn Hill palette, of course. How could I not mention it? It's also a very affordable for what you get. You get 35 eyeshadows for $38, which is really good. It's like less than $1 per one of these shades, and typically these can go for like $6, so that's really good. And I love the shade range that you have in this palette. You get a nice variety of shimmers and mattes, and they all blend perfectly. I've never had a bad look with this palette ever. Like they all turn out really good and really blended. And yes, I love this palette. You get a very big variety of shades. They are mostly warm shades, but I wear warm shades, so most of these palettes are very warm. But I also find that all these shades are very pigmented and they blend really nicely. All these blend really nicely and are very pigmented, but I'll give you some swatches. So yes, and I like most Morphe palettes, but if I could choose one, it would be this palette, so that's why I'm mentioning it in this video. I like that you have like this little corner right here that gives like a nice pop of color, and you can make this palette look really everyday and daytime, or you can make it like really nighttime and like really smoky and dramatic. So I love this palette so much. I love Jaclyn, of course. Okay, so these next ones aren't very affordable, but still very good. I have the Colored Raine Queen of Hearts eyeshadow palette. These colors blend out really nicely, and these shimmers are like insanely pigmented, like they're crazy. These eyeshadows don't give me like that much fallout, and they are really pigmented and really intense, and they blend out really nicely. I like the color range in this palette. I can do really dramatic looks. I can also do really natural looks. I can do warm looks. I can do cool tone looks with this shade and like this brown, stuff like that. So I really like this palette, and it may look a little bit similar to the Modern Renaissance by Anastasia, but I like the colors in this one better, and I find that these don't perform as well. They're very powdery, and I find that sometimes they're a little bit tricky to blend for me. With these ones, I've never had any issues with, and you get more shimmers in this palette than you do in this one, so I like the Colored Raine way better, but that's up to you. And another palette that's kind of similar that I've tried is the Wet n Wild eyeshadow palette, and this one is pretty good. It's not the best, but if you're wanting something from the drugstore that's similar to this palette, I think that this one is really nice. It can be a little bit tricky to blend sometimes. Like I've had a few times where it doesn't blend the greatest, but I don't think it's bad. I think it's really nice for the price. So if you're wanting a nice dupe, I think that these are pretty similar to each other, and also the Modern Renaissance. So yes, but overall this one is my favorite. I love this palette, and if you're wanting to splurge on a pretty expansive palette, then this is a good one. So the last best eyeshadow palette that I have is the Sephora Pro palette. This is the Pro Pigment palette in editorial. You get like a really big mirror, and this palette is super expensive. I believe this is $70. As soon as I saw this palette, I fell in love. I love the colors that it has. I will say that some of the shimmers aren't the greatest. They're not super pigmented, and they're kind of dry, so they're kind of like a little bit crumbly and like kind of sheer in a way. But I mostly use this palette for these shades only, so I like these ones for like inner corners. I love this palette for colors. I think that they perform really nicely. They're a bit of like a powdery formula, but I still think they perform really nicely, and I love the color range of this palette. I love these shades right here, and then this blue is my favorite. I love blue eyeshadows, and I think this one is a really nice one. You know, I love the color range, I love the packaging, and I love the looks that I create with this palette. I think it's a really nice one. So even though it is really expensive, I think that is worth it. Even though it's really ridiculously expensive. Like, I was shocked how expensive this was, because typically the Sephora brand isn't this expensive, but it's so good. I hate that I like it, but I do. Okay, so now I'm gonna talk about my least favorite eyeshadow palettes, and I will say that I haven't really tried like that many like bad ones. I typically will like to spend my money on really good ones, you know, what I've heard other people talking about, but these ones just are my favorite. So the first one I have to talk about is the Covergirl True Naked's eyeshadow palette. This is the Roses one. I got this a while ago, and I don't like it. To me, the colors are very powdery and kind of sheer. Like the shimmer shades are super sheer and just very powdery. They're not very shimmery either. They're just like matte shades, like a bunch of glitter in them. There's only like two somewhat shimmery shades, and still they're not the greatest to me. I don't like it. And I find that they're so powdery and so thin and like soft that they kind of like blend away when you try to blend them out. So it is a very affordable palette, and the color range is really pretty, but I just don't think that they perform the greatest. So I don't love this palette, but maybe if you like a really natural everyday palette, maybe this would be good for you. But I found that they probably wouldn't last in your eyes so long because they just blend away into nothing. So okay, so the next one I want to talk about is one that I love, but I kind of hate at the same time. I'll get into it. This is the Anastasia Subculture palette. I know that a lot of people don't like this palette, but I mean, I love the color range in this palette, and I find that, yes, the colors are very powdery, but are very pigmented, but they're very soft. Like all Anastasia shadows are very, very soft, but this one is just a bit more softer than what they normally are, but the pigmentation is really good on this palette, and I keep using it because I love the colors in this palette. But I will say sometimes I'll have looks that turn out amazing, like I did an olive green look with this color right here, and it turned out really good. I didn't have any issues with it, but I tried to do a look using this color right here, and it kind of looked a little bit patchy, and I didn't upload it because it didn't turn out the greatest. So I will say that most of the time my looks turn out good with this, but sometimes I turn out bad. So I don't know, maybe it's something I did, but I will say, since they are so powdery and so pigmented, you do not need to pick up a lot in your brush. Like one dip is all you need, literally. That will last you for days. So just in one little tap in is like what works best for me, and I think that would help you save a lot of your eyeshadow in a way. That way you don't kick up too much fallout. Okay, so the next ones I want to talk about are the Flower Beauty eyeshadow palettes. These are kind of like the same situation as the Anastasia Subculture, of where like I like them but I kind of don't at the same time. Like sometimes I get really good looks with these, and sometimes my looks aren't the greatest with these. Like I try to do a drugstore video with the Golden Natural palette, and I used the deeper brown shade, but it didn't blend out the greatest. Like it kind of looked a little bit patchy. So I found that some of these shades are good and some of these aren't. They kind of remind me a little bit of the Covergirl palette, but this one is a lot better than the Covergirl palette. I found the shimmers are a lot more pigmented and they're not as soft, but they're still pretty soft eyeshadows. It's a drugstore palette. I do think it's really nice for a drugstore palette. These palettes are my favorite from the drugstore. I just don't think that they perform the greatest, like compared to what I love and use, like Colourpop. They're not as good as Colourpop in my opinion, but I do think it's a nice palette, but sometimes it can be a little tricky to work with, and you don't get too many matte shades. You only get 1, 2, 3 matte shades. So I mean, you're kind of limited on what you can do. But I do find that the matte shades are like wisely chosen, if that makes any sense. Like you get a nice crease shade and you get 2 deepening shades, something that's nice. And then this one is the Warm Natural palette. This one is pretty good for a purple palette. The only shades I don't like is these 3 right here. I find that they are just really sheer. Trying to be like, they're like a mix between a shimmer and a matte. I feel like you need to choose which one you want to do, but I mean, I don't think it's bad, but I don't think it's good. It can be a little bit difficult to work with. You have to try a bit harder with these. I just thought I would mention them because out of the ones I've tried, those ones are ones I don't really reach for the most, but I still use them. I still like them, but you know, I just can't decide. Okay, so the next one is one that I don't necessarily hate. I don't know. This is a Pure Cosmetics Buff Collection eyeshadow palette. It's very similar to the Naked 3, and I believe this is like $50. These are very sheer and not very pigmented, so I feel like if you like an everyday palette, maybe you'd like this, but still I'd go for the Naked and get like a true brand. I don't know. It did come with a brush, which is nice, and I still use that brush pretty much all the time, but I don't like the eyeshadows that much. They're not super pigmented. My hands are like disgusting. They're not super pigmented, and it's kind of like an palette for me. I'd say just go with the real thing and get the Naked 3 palette. That way it would perform a bit nicer. I wish you would get more matte shades in this palette. You only get 3, so having more matte shades would give you like a more structured look, but still they're so sheer, I don't think it mattered. I actually gave this to my sister. That way she can use that like on an everyday basis. I don't even know if she wears eyeshadow, but it's very natural. I'm sure no one can tell if she's wearing eyeshadow or not. Okay, so the last one I want to talk about is the Naked 2 palette. This one is not a bad eyeshadow palette, but this was the first eyeshadow palette that me and my mom like got, because we share most of our makeup, but I found that we used it a lot when we first had it. Like this was like the first big makeup purchase that we ever got, but I don't know, I found the color range doesn't speak to me like that much. Like when I first got this, I didn't really know much about like eyeshadows. Like I didn't know like what colors I like, what colors I go for. You get 4 mattes in this palette, which I wish you would have got more, and these shimmer shades out here aren't the most pigmented shades. Like the only shade that I like really like in this palette is the shade Chopper, but I don't know. It does perform really nicely. It's just the color range does not speak to me, and I don't think it's worth $54. I mean, as like a starter palette, I think it's a really nice palette, and I think if you like cool tone shades, I think you'd like this, and if you like shimmer shades, then you would like this. My mom is all about cool tones and shimmers, so I think that she still likes this palette. It's not for me, not more. Okay, so that concludes this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please remember to subscribe and like it before you leave, and let me know down below what your favorites or least favorite eyeshadow palettes are, and maybe I'll check them out. But yes, that concludes this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Aw, you trees. Is this highlight too much? I feel like it's too much. I love the shade range in this palette. I don't love it. I kind of don't. I kind of hate it.